Certainly. The movie starts with the arrival of a sleek black car, its engine purring softly as it comes to a stop. Stepping out of the vehicle, Catherine is greeted by the enthusiastic presence of Faulkner, a man with a glint of excitement in his eyes. Faulkner wastes no time in extending an invitation to Catherine, beckoning her to witness the groundbreaking project that he has been pouring his heart and soul into. As they step inside, the atmosphere crackles with an electric energy of anticipation. Catherine's eyes widen in wonder as she takes in the sight of the high-tech laboratory, pulsating with the hum of machinery and the glow of monitors displaying intricate data. Faulkner guides her through the maze of technology, leading her to a specific area where her own car is the subject of a daring experiment, poised to redefine the boundaries of what's possible. With a sense of bated breath, they initiate the trial, infusing the vehicle with a surge of power. Tension fills the room as they anxiously wait for the moment of truth. Suddenly, to their amazement, the car vanishes into thin air, leaving behind only a faint whiff of ozone. Yet, their triumph is short-lived as strange and unexplained noises begin to reverberate through the walls, causing their initial excitement to morph into a sense of foreboding uncertainty. The narrative shifts its focus to a location about 12 miles from the bustling city of Philadelphia. In the tranquil airspace above, a helicopter glides gracefully, its blades slicing through the air with a rhythmic whir. Amidst the peaceful flight, an unexpected disruption occurs as the pilot is taken aback by the sudden emergence of a colossal ship, seemingly materializing out of thin air. In a split second, the helicopter collides with the unexpected obstacle, sending shards of metal and the acrid scent of fuel into the air. Meanwhile, back in the lab, the once lively atmosphere has transformed into a state of collective worry and mounting concern. Anxiety etches itself onto the faces of the researchers and technicians as they grapple with the unnerving absence of the very car that had just moments ago been the subject of their ambitious experiment. Murmurs of uncertainty ripple through the air, punctuated by the occasional click of keyboards and the low hum of electronic equipment. It becomes increasingly apparent that the desired outcome has eluded their grasp, leaving behind a vacuum of disappointment and apprehension that hangs heavily in the room. The tale gently shifts its focus to a quaint little coffee shop nestled amidst the bustling cityscape, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingles with the soft murmur of friendly chatter and the clinking of cups. Within this cozy enclave, two women, their faces animated with conversation and purpose, bustle about attending to the patrons with warmth and grace. In the midst of this comforting scene, a familiar figure enters the frame, a uniformed policeman named Carl. His arrival infuses the air with a sense of gentle reassurance and familiarity, drawing affectionate smiles from the women as they exchange pleasantries and warm embraces. The gentle lilt of laughter and the clinking of coffee cups from the soundtrack to their tender exchanges, suffusing the atmosphere with an air of comfort and ease. However, as the minutes tick by, the tranquil setting is abruptly disrupted by the shrill ring of Carl's phone, cutting through the peaceful ambience like a sudden gust of wind. With a look of regret etched upon his features, Carl tenderly bids adieu to his beloved, expressing his apologies with a touch of remorse. With a determined yet reluctant stride, he makes his exit, leaving behind a faint echo of his presence and the lingering warmth of his affection. Following this, a string of peculiar events unfolds, casting a surreal veil over the otherwise ordinary fabric of everyday life. Carl, navigating the urban labyrinth, arrives at the crash site of the helicopter, only to be greeted by the bewildering sight of a colossal ship resting ominously upon the very asphalt that was once the domain of cars and pedestrians. Meanwhile, in the confines of the laboratory, Catherine and Faulkner engage in a hushed yet animated conversation, their furrowed brows hinting at the gravity of the situation. Their dialogue is momentarily interrupted by the unsettling news delivered by a concerned lab worker, who reveals that the source of the unexplained noises is none other than the storied USS Eldridge. The scene then pivots back to Carl, his voice laced with urgency as he places a frantic call to the Navy and police. With a tone rife with astonishment and disbelief, he informs them of the improbable sighting of the World War II destroyer, the USS Eldridge, eerily stationed on the very runway meant for contemporary aircraft and modern travel. As the night casts its dark veil over the city, a man startles awake, his heart pounding in his chest as he grapples with the remnants of a vivid nightmare. Instinctively, he fumbles for the phone, his trembling fingers tracing the familiar digits as he dials the number for the authorities, his voice quivering with urgency as he reports the malfunctioning phase generators. However, his distress grows as he attempts to reach out to his colleagues, only to be met with an unsettling silence that echoes through the emptiness of the night. With each desperate attempt to convey the severity of the situation, his voice falters, his words falling on deaf ears as the shadows seem to swallow his cries for help, leaving him isolated in a world that suddenly feels unfamiliar and unfriendly. A shiver of unease courses through his veins as he grapples with the eerie sensation that something far beyond his comprehension is at play, casting a pall of fear and uncertainty over the once familiar surroundings. In the following scene, Faulkner and Catherine are on a plane, talking about the USS Eldridge and its crew. Catherine explains that the USS Eldridge and its crew went missing during an experiment in 1943. Faulkner asks her to provide him with all the details and files, as he wants to learn more about it. The scene then shifted to Carl, where he was telling his strange encounter to his girlfriend. He was still in shock and amazed by the situation. Carl heard strange sounds coming from the ship. As he approached, he realized the man who had been talking about the generator issue was actually a survivor. He touched some beams and suddenly found himself outside the ship. In the next scene, Carl becomes curious about the strange ship and notices some rays around it. He touches the rays and suddenly finds himself inside the ship. At the same time, his girlfriend arrives at the scene, feeling very anxious. Carl tries to make a phone call while inside. Suddenly, the ship, along with Reed, vanishes. Next, the scene moved to the survivor from the ship, who was wandering around, completely amazed by the people and things around him. Coming from the old era, he was stunned by the modern buildings, clothing, people, and lifestyles. He then stumbled upon a newspaper and was shocked to see the date, which was August 27, 2012. He walked into the coffee shop where Carl's girlfriend worked, ordered a coffee, and then left. The scene then depicts a series of strange events. Molly, the girlfriend of Carl, calls and tells him about the odd man she met at the coffee shop. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the scientists are struggling to control an experiment that has gone wrong, causing destruction worldwide. The survivor is shown to be connected to the rays and the experiment taking place in the lab. The ship reappears on the screen, landing on a building in downtown Chicago, causing panic and chaos as people start running. The scene then moves to Molly's house, where she discovers her front door is open. Worried, she grabs a stick for protection and cautiously enters. Inside, she finds books on the table containing pictures and information about the survivor. Suddenly, she hears a noise and becomes alert. To her surprise, she sees the same survivor, who turns out to be Molly's grandfather. He asks about her grandmother, and upon learning of her passing, as well as the death of Molly's mother 3 years ago, he becomes saddened. While Molly is on a phone call, she turns on the TV, which shows news about the ship's arrival. The scene then changes to Catherine and Faulkner discussing the physics and logic of the vanished ship, trying to find a way to stop its destructive effects. It then shifts to Molly and her grandfather, William Gardner, having a conversation. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and while Molly goes to open it, William tries to hide. At the door, she finds a government official who asks about Gardner. In the meantime, Gardner emerges from the back and attacks the official. The scene then intensified, with several things happening at once. Catherine and Faulkner were focused on controlling the experiments. Molly and Gardner were trying to hide from the government official, eventually seeking refuge in a coffee shop. Inside, Molly took some money and car keys to escape, but the official followed them. When questioned, Molly's friend denied knowing Gardner, but the official checked the cameras and discovered the truth. Electric sparks surrounded the ship, hinting at its impending disappearance from Chicago, which soon became a reality. Catherine and Faulkner were feeling panicked and upset due to their experiments, as the ship's widespread destruction was causing international issues. Meanwhile, Molly and Gardner were seen driving to meet another survivor of the ship, Morton Salinger. They arrived at his location, and the scene then shifted to the lab, where Faulkner instructed his colleague to shut down the generators. The scene changed to Molly, Gardner, and Salinger, where Salinger recounted a tale about how scientists, with the support of the Department of Defense, recruited him 20 years ago, prompting him to fake his own death. Meanwhile, Catherine and Faulkner were discussing the project. Catherine contacted the government official, informing them that they had located Gardner's old friend, Salinger. She instructed the official to bring him in, either alive or dead. Faulkner disagreed, arguing that they needed them alive because they were crucial to the project and their adversaries. The scene revealed Gardner telling Salinger that he was the only survivor from the ship, as the other members fused. Salinger inquired about his location on the ship, to which Gardner replied that he was in the post-generator area. Salinger suggested that the generator had bonded with the atoms of his body, causing him to feel electric shocks whenever the ship appeared or reappeared. Molly asked if her boyfriend would still be alive on the ship, as she was receiving calls from his phone. Salinger threw her phone into the water, warning that it might be traced. The next scene depicted the government official firing at Gardner's car. They tried to escape, but Salinger was badly injured. He informed Gardner that both he and the ship needed to return to 1943. Salinger mentioned a research institute where his loyal team worked. Molly and Gardner left, encountering many police officers along the way, whom they evaded by hiding behind cars. As the time for the car's reappearance approached, Gardner started feeling electric shocks. Due to the electric and magnetic fields, one of the cars caught fire, diverting the police's attention. Molly and Gardner managed to escape. The ship reappeared in a desert, where Catherine ordered the military to drop bombs on it, intending to destroy it. However, the plan backfired as the ship's magnetic and electric field caused a jet plane to crash. The ship landed on the west coast of England, causing damage above nuclear reactors. Molly and Gardner arrived at Salinger's institute, finding the research team dead, shot in the head. They were pursued by government officials and the police. Shots were fired at Gardner, but the magnetic field in his body saved him. Molly was shot in the leg. Faulkner arrived and offered them shelter. They decided to work together. Molly, a skilled hacker, attempted to retrieve data from the institute's research scientist's laptop. They reached a laboratory where they successfully brought the ship. Catherine arrived and expressed her admiration. Faulkner urged her to stop shooting people and focus on finding solutions. However, Catherine remained determined to bomb the ship. Despite the pleas of Faulkner and Molly to refrain from interfering, she shot Faulkner. Meanwhile, Gardner managed to enter the ship to deactivate the generator. The movie reached its thrilling climax where the stakes were high. Gardner struggled to deactivate the generators while Catherine was busy looting the machinery into a truck. A government official boarded the ship and engaged in a fight with Gardner. Faulkner managed to take the gun from Catherine, and Molly shot her. Meanwhile, Carl defended Molly's grandfather. Gardner generated an electric field that resulted in the death of the government official. He instructed Carl to leave as the place was about to be destroyed. Molly also made her way out. The ship then traveled back to 1953. The final scene shows Gardner as an elderly man leading a simple life with Molly. Molly married her true love, and they all lived happily ever after.